Well, former Premier, it's a good thing you've spoken about corruption, and I believe Honorable Martha, you can just speak up after him because this is a docket that directly translates to you. Now, corruption is a big thing, as Azimio One Kenya Coalition has spoken about, and I believe it formed the premise upon which you added that extra docket of the Justice and Legal Affairs to the Deputy President when you were mentioning your shadow cabinet. Now, this would necessarily mean that the Deputy President is overseeing policies and issues pertaining to the Justice and Legal Affairs, but many would argue that in the long run it would have a ripple effect in affecting the independence of institutions such as the Office of the Public Prosecutor, we have the DCI, we have the ACC. So how then would you ensure as the executive that you do not compromise on the independence of these institutions that should be so?
Govt is going to talk to you about the details.
Yeah.
But let me just tell you that we have one government. And the government now consists of three arms. You've got the executive, you've got the judiciary, and you've got the legislature. All these three arms are interdependent. If one is not working properly, efficiently, it actually affects the other arm of the government. See, so it is necessary, therefore, for these three arms of government, in spite of the independence, to also see the interdependence of them, because they are all providing services. Yeah. The executive cannot perform its work if the judiciary is not working. You see, if the judiciary is not working, it actually affects the executive. See, when you are talking about the criminals, and if these criminals are arrested, and then they are taken to court, and then they are released, of course, they become a drag on society. You've got, how many cases have we had? A criminal who was killed or who was threatened to kill. I think it just happened last week. He's taken to court, he's been given bail, he comes out and goes and kills his mother. See, so something is wrong somewhere, which must be addressed. The same thing with the legislature. If Parliament is the one that passes the laws, the executive implements the laws which Parliament has passed. They use those laws to govern the country. Then the judiciary interprets the laws and to see that the laws are being implemented, they're not being violated. But if the legislature makes wrong laws, then the executive also work is affected. So there must always be a kind of cooperation. I think people are pushing this word, so-called independence, too far, as if they are in different countries. That you've got, like, for example, independent, we've got these commissions that we set up in the Constitution, that each one of them is now dependent on its own. You cannot interfere with what they're doing. They are protected by the Constitution, even if they're not doing their work, or even they're doing it wrongly, that there's nothing you can do about it. I don't think that is what is intended in the Constitution. You see, there's independence and there's also interdependence, generally. So, like when you talk about the criminal justice system, you've got the investigative arms of government. Then you've got the procedural arm of government, the DPP. Then you've got the judiciary. You see? So sometimes you find the police themselves collude to shield criminals. But sometimes the police have done their work. The DCI has done its work and has gotten sufficient evidence. The DPP refuses or says this evidence is not sufficient. And it's discretionary to him. He refuses to prosecute. Or when it agrees to prosecute, takes to court, then the courts themselves are compromised. And you know that courts sometimes are compromised. So a court that can compromise, in my view, is worse than the criminals, because it protects the criminals. Okay? But then, this is a conversation I've had when I was a prime minister before, with the then Chief Justice, when we were having those problems. But that was, of course, the situation prior to the new constitution. Okay? So my view is that, yes, independence is there, but there's also interdependence of these arms of government, because ultimately you want the delivery of services to the people to be done efficiently.
Okay. Well, Honorable Martha, I'm sure there's a lot of uncertainty to this role because you'll be the deputy president and there's also this additional role. And according to Article 147(4) of the Constitution, you cannot hold two offices. So maybe if you just respond to the same and clarify what this would mean as a member of the executive overseeing certain arms of the judicial aspect.
I think that's a misconception.
Okay.
If you look at the description of what a deputy president does, is be the principal assistant of the president and perform any other duties assigned by the president. So any other duties is covered. You can hold a ministerial docket. And there's no difference when a deputy president holds a ministerial docket and when any other minister holds. So the framing of the question, as though having a deputy president hold the Office of Justice and Constitutional Affairs Ministry is an oppressive thing, is wrong, is misleading. It is a ministerial portfolio like any other. And for people to understand the three arms of government, it's like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. The three of them fall into place and make the whole. So they are independent but interdependent. And the Justice Ministry is a coordinating ministry. It doesn't prosecute. It doesn't arrest. It doesn't decide on the cases. So it's a more policy and coordination so that when arms of government get together and you want to find where things are not moving and whether we are moving according to the policy direction and to support each other in execution, not in decision-making. When the government proposes to Parliament a bill, it doesn't sit in Parliament to pass that bill, but it's a government proposal. When the government, sitting with the judicial arm, asks for speedy movement of cases, it doesn't go in to determine those cases or to hear the evidence. It's talking about policy direction. So that, for instance, if we need any law to limit how long certain cases can sit, then it's agreed together in a consultation. Proposals are made by the relevant department and placed forward. So there's no contradiction whatsoever. The Azimio government will be a government that upholds the rule of law and constitutionalism, and will strictly do things in accordance with the law. So I'd like people to know that it is not a contradiction for a deputy president to have additional responsibilities assigned by the president. Okay. And that's precisely what we are talking about. And fighting corruption, if I may add, is more than just about going to court. It involves giving the public confidence that the government is serious about what it is doing so that the public can be partners in the fight against corruption. And if we wind backwards and go to 203 basically when the NAC government came in, the public was so inspired by the zeal and the commitment of the NAC government that members of the public could actually stop policemen from receiving bribes on the roads. Okay. Members of public chose to walk to force the matatu industry to accept the Michuki rules. Members of public recovered the Kenyatta International Conference Center from those occupying it and claiming ownership and handed it back to the relevant ministry. This is the kind of thing we are looking for, that we will demonstrate our commitment to fighting corruption and make the public our partners in this fight. And that goes beyond just applying the law, and also working seamlessly with those in the criminal justice sector, the courts, the legislature, where we need to tighten the laws, etc.
Okay. Well,
yeah.